was reaching my room, I could hear their commander just shouted in Swahili, "Watu wameisha huko, tokeni." I saw death face to face because I was seated on the front lawn. I saw God. Giving is to know that faith is real. It's not just an idea. So Charles Peter is my name. Charles Peter Mwangi. And I'm born again. That's one of the most beautiful titles that I love, more than any other title that I'll ever have. Yes, and I joined the University of Nairobi, the university, they like calling it, in 1996. And I was doing a bachelor's in land economics. It's called BA Land Economics. Today you call it to be a bachelor's of real estate. That's what they call it. And of course, for some of us, being in Nairobi after so many, do I say after so many years, because that's the time we were getting acclimatized to Nairobi. We did not know Nairobi that well. So it had its own emotions because you are new. One of the things I'm grateful to God is that I got to know Christ when I was in high school. And so it was easy for me on matters faith to trust God and to walk with God when I was in the university. And I knew that this can only be reinforced in a fellowship, and I found a fellowship in the Christian Union. There were so many other organizations that came to try and get first years to join them. But I think having been a leader of the Christian Union in high school, I found myself so much belonging in the main campus Christian Union. We had an orientation week, largely in a Friday meeting, where we went and we got introduced to the Christian Union. We had very loving and caring brethren who took care of us. Thank God, university is not like high school where there was bullying. So here you are an adult and you had to find your own way. But I'm grateful to God that we still found fellowship. And of course, with the fellowship, with the time, we found ourselves serving in the Christian Union. The first role I played was an usher. I was given the role of an usher. And I served faithfully, welcoming people. We still had that thing of counting people. I don't know whether you still retain it, where we would count people when they were coming in. And just making sure that everything was okay in the Sunday service, taking care of the invited speakers. That is the first role that I played as a first year and I think part of second year. One thing that happened during our times is that there used to be closures because there used to be a lot of strikes. And so there were prolonged closures, and sometimes the school will be closed indefinitely until you wait to be recalled. And so there were academic interruptions in between. So during my second year, that was 1997-98, I became the in charge of ushers in the Christian Union. And now I took charge of the ushering group, where largely I was now in charge of the visitors who are coming, making sure that they are comfortable, in charge of the people that are visiting the service. And this was largely in the Sunday service. There wasn't a lot of ushering in the Friday fellowship. And again, when we came, we had these two committees, the worship committee and the executive committee. And ushering largely leaned on the worship committee, which took care of the Sunday services. So that is where I served during my time when the first years were reporting. I felt there was need because every other club had their own tables, orientation and all that. And that is the first time we put an orientation table to welcome the first years. And our group did it. And I am grateful that since we started that culture, it has been maintained and it is still ongoing up to today. It is something that we thank God for. And we served in ushering as the Lord enabled. We did the best we could. Of course, that does not mean that we did not get involved in the activities of the executive committee. Something like the annual mission, we were so much involved. There is no annual mission I missed when I was in the university from first year. Should I remember it is in university I visited Kisumu for the first time with a mission in a place called Bale in Vihiga, and we were there for a whole week. There is no mission I ever missed, and not just missed because I was passionate about sharing the gospel. I found myself door to door preaching in those annual missions. It's an area that I would say grounded my faith so much when I was in the university. What are challenges? Yes, there were challenges. As I said, there used to be so many strikes when we were in the university. I remember one day when we were doing exams in first year in ADD. And I still remember this day when the police, the GSU, broke through ADD and they entered the exam room. And they lobbed tear gas to us when we were doing exams. They clobbered one of our lecturers. Actually, he almost died, but we thank God that he survived. We lost one of our colleagues, a student, but we are grateful to God that he kept us going even during those times. Those times I saw death face to face because I was seated on the front row, but I called on the name that I know, the name of Jesus, and somehow I found myself surviving. I used to stay in the prefabs. Do we still have the prefabs? I hope they're still there. And I remember a day again, there was another strike, and the GSU invaded the prefabs. And I was in the last room. And I remember how they clobbered people, and I could hear them coming slowly and slowly near my room. And I told God, God, I'm in this situation, but I want you to save me. And they really harassed a lot of people and did a lot of bad things, I would say so. But I'm grateful to God that by the time they were almost reaching my room, I could hear their commander just shouted in Swahili, watu wameisha huko, tokeni. And so I was spared again. I saw God sparing me. And stayed for a while, thought they have left. And then I was here leaving the prefab now to go home with my bag, and only to find them on Mamlaka Road. Again, I was scared, but I don't know what happened because miraculously a few of them came, surrounded me, and they escorted me all the way to University Way in town. Nobody touched me. I saw myself in the newspaper the following day. University of Nairobi closed, and the student was sent home. And I was here surrounded by GSU. Again, I saw God. And I think the key thing is to know that faith is real. It's not just an idea. Because when I saw how God saved me in that classroom, when the GSU invaded, when I saw how God saved me in the prefabs, and during those demonstrations, these are areas that reinforced my faith and helped me to trust God all the more. Yes, so during my third year, and of course now fourth year, I assumed now the leadership of the worship committee. I became the chair of the worship committee, and that is the time now when Focus initiated negotiations on how we can merge the... I don't know how you do it today, but for the worship committee, we would come together before our last meeting. We never used to involve the membership. We are filled with the Spirit of God. So we're able to know who is likely to take as the chair. There was the vice chair, and there was the in charge of ushers. I remember there were several other offices in charge of ushers because we never used to be so many. There was the secretary and the assistant secretary. The worship committee did not used to have a lot of people. Now, where we used now to involve the rest of the group is on the executive committee. When we are selecting them, we will get to know, we would wish to know whom they had in mind. That I was not so much pro-margin because I thought I was killing the vision. And so I was a bit opposed to that. But again, I left myself open so that God would have his way. And we continued doing things the way we were doing them as the worship committee, organizing for the Sunday services. Only that this time around there was more collaboration with the executive committee, which again used to meet on to hold meetings on Fridays, but we used to have meetings on Saturday. And so that continued until now. The process, I think, was formally concluded when I left office. The person now who took over after me was no longer called the worship committee chairman. He was called the worship secretary. I don't know whether that is the name that is still retained up to date, but that is the way it was. I'm grateful to God because I served the purposes of God when I was in the university. I preached in so many Sunday services. A while back, I would come to the library where we used to keep those messages in cassettes and listen. I'm not so sure that they are still there, but I'm grateful to God that I did what I could have done during my time. I had the opportunity of visiting President Moi twice in State House when we were there. The first time I visited as a student leader, and then we visited as the CEO. And I remember he donated quite some money to the CEO that helped us to buy equipment then, and we bought equipment which I think the CEO retained for quite a while. We hosted him when I was the chairman of the worship committee, and the room was very tense. When he came, people did not know what to say. And when I was invited, I had to ask people, and the innocence of a student, why are you so quiet? Do you know there is a greater one than President Moi who is here? And everybody laughed. And we were able to break that tension, and it was beautiful. We organized very, very colorful events. Hosted the president. We once invited the Christian Police Association. You know, police were really enemies of students. That's the way we regarded them. And we had quite good programs, and we influenced our generation to the best of our ability. That is making sure that we cover all topics in the program as topics that were meant to satisfy the spiritual needs of the students then. Those are the times every service, everything was powerful. How was the service powerful? I think we used to use power. Nowadays, for you people, it was fun. It was fun. It has changed. Everything now is fun. But yes, the quality of messages, because it was more, our messages were more focused on character formation, not just the having fun and feeling good. It was largely character formation, and I strongly believe today we are, again, because of the formation we found from the messages that were spoken to us. We organized evangelistic meetings, that is amongst the students. I don't know whether this university still has the triennial missions that used to be there, where we would just target the students and make sure that we do it. But I think my greatest joy is to say that we served God to the best. And we still saw God coming through for us. In 1998, one of the things that happened is that I remember Israel by then was celebrating 50 years. And there was that intervarsity competition that was organized through Focus. And this was a Bible contest. And so many of us were involved. And I remember we went to Sitam Valley Road. Then it was NPC. And so many students participated in this contest. And I'm grateful that in 1998, after so many thousands that participated in this contest, the person who emerged number one was then in charge of ushers. And that was, and I was sponsored for a 10-day trip to the state of Israel. Again, it is something that happened when I was in the university. I saw God's faithfulness. I saw God's leading. I never cared about where things to do with the paying fees and all that would come from. I came from a very needy background, but somehow, miraculously, God sustained me. One of the things that I used to do when I was in the university was to take photos. I was a cameraman. That is what I was known for. And that is how I survived. I remember a colleague one day asking me, Charles, what will you do? And I have not given you any money. And I told them, I don't know what my father will do. And that is the year that I ended up having a lot of money. I even visited Israel that particular year. And I saw God miraculously coming through for me. That is my testimony of how I saw God and how God kept me as a student. I stood in during my last Sunday service as a chair, and I told them that even if it takes 100 years for Christ to come, I will still be born again. And today we are talking of 26 years after, and I'm still born again. We had what I would call accountability groups. And one of the greatest forms of accountability were the Bible study groups, which I hope they are still there. Bible study group, you would meet, it will happen at this time. You know, you'll always agree on what time. And we also had the schedule. We'll meet where. Again, that was very crucial. The question you did not want to be asked is, why didn't you come for the Bible study? And I think because of that, we used to have very few absences. And because of lack of mobile phones, if you don't come, then we'll guess most likely you're not feeling well. And so you might actually find 5 or 6 people visiting you. And to avoid that, then you had to come. You had to come. Yeah, because now with a mobile phone, you just send a text and that's all. But those times we did not have that form of communication. So after Bible study is over, it was not difficult to find guys visiting you to get to know why you did not come. That was the height of accountability during our time. And then we also had prayers, Monday prayers. Ofungamano, we used to be there every morning, and we would always encourage each other, you know, provoke each other for good. We would provoke each other, especially when it comes to that. So the issues of Bible study groups and prayer meetings, it played a crucial, and forgive my played a crucial role in fostering accountability, especially amongst the brethren. As I have said, the way we were integrated, it was very difficult for somebody to get lost and we don't know. It was difficult. Again, I also think the love that we shared. After Friday, I remember after Friday coffee, people did not want to go home. Even during exams, you want to bond over coffee. And remember, especially also for students, you're not in a hurry to leave. Especially when you're in third year, fourth year, you're still looking for a spouse. So you're not in a hurry to leave. And so again, this became another reinforced accountability, because everybody is looking who is who. We used to have retreats organized by the Christian Union. I met my wife during one of those retreats in Uhuru Gardens. So actually, there were so many forums to reinforce accountability within the Christian Union that almost everybody was visible. Most of the people we used to be together in the university, today I would not pass them. I would know them. And we have maintained that contact. I think success for us, first of all, the offerings, because you know, we have to get to see how people giving, because giving was crucial. And then the ability to get quality speakers and have impactful messages. And of course, the fact that you've been appointed as a leader and you'll be able to come out without questionable integrity. That is key, because we are grateful to God that we stood for our faith when He gave us an opportunity to serve. We handed over the baton, and we are there to come and help the Christian Union when they call us. There is a time they called me for a whole week of lunch hour meetings, and we were there. Occasionally we come for the Sunday services, but I think it is important for our younger brothers and sisters to know we can only get involved to the extent you are willing to involve us.